All right, thanks everyone for joining. June 26, 2019. This is the end of sprint 24, and this time we make the actual recording public. It will also be published on YouTube later. So if someone has comments, you can definitely use the chat while people are demoing, and then we can definitely discuss in the chat in parallel. All right, so Joel, if you're ready, you can share your screen.
Yes. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good to go.
Go. So there's not a lot of things to talk about, but so we have been doing several things like we have updated some icons using Patternfly 4, so starting to use Patternfly 4. So Alberto is already doing a lot of work on that. And here I can show just new icons that have been introduced. For instance, if I go to the services, here you can see that there is that new icon that replaced the not available text that we had before. So it's more consistent to have icons everywhere instead of sometimes icons and sometimes text. You can see here as well the icon. Another thing is not very visible, but we have moved all of the code that is related to the metrics, that the charts. We have moved them to a new library that is named CatCharted, and so under the Kiali repo in GitHub. And here on the README, you can get a description of everything, how to use it in the code. So there is the server side and there is the client side. So the server in Go and client side in JavaScript or TypeScript. And all information is here. So it's Kiali /cat-charted on GitHub. And then I'm going to give a little demo on that. So
okay.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is that
okay,
fine?
I don't know. Looks like I'm having network connection issues.
We can hear you, Joel, from here.
Okay, so I continue. Okay. I don't know if Thomas can join us, but yeah. So okay, I'm lost. Yes, for instance, here I've got some applications. Or let me show you the graph. So this is a graph with several services, and we already have some metrics. For instance, inbound and outbound metrics from Istio. And one thing interesting is that here, for instance, we can show by local version and show different versions that are deployed. And something, if we want to go deeper and have more insight, we can also, for instance, show JVM metrics. Okay, they have a little bug. I need to refresh. Okay, and just imagine that I would like to, in this demo, I want to compare two deployments, and the two deployments are different because I have deployed one with a hotspot VM. It's both Java programs, so hotspot VM, and another one with OpenG9 VM. And so here, what I'm going to do is just apply a new micrometer dashboard that we can see here. So this dashboard is shipped with Kiali, but here what I've done is overriding it to add a label here, label VM, and this label is something that I have in my pods. So let me show you. if I go to the workloads, AI locals, you can see here that I have added for one deployment label VM hotspot, and for another deployment, the label VM OpenGen9. And this is something that we can do with the runtimes metric, and that currently we cannot do with these two metrics, is having a comparison based on that label in the metrics. And here, because I've updated my dashboard, and let me show you again, I've updated my dashboard definition here, and I've added these labels here. So it's going to get these labels that are both in the metrics in Prometheus and on the Kubernetes objects. And here, then I can see the show metrics by VM. Okay, there's just OpenGen9 because I'm on the workload level. So if I go on the application level, go to AI, VM metrics, and then I can really compare. I don't know why we don't see everything. Okay, little problems, but here we go. More or less. I don't know what happened, the demo effect. Okay, here we go. So we can see the memory footprint, for example, between hotspot and OpenGen9 and this, everything like that. So with Kubernetes labels, we can really have more comparison with the runtimes metrics. And that's something that is interesting when we want to go further than what Istio provides the metric. Of course, the Istio metrics are incredible because we get everything out of the box, but with some more little work, we can show more. And that's all for me, what I have to show. Is there some question, maybe?
Okay, thank you, Joel. So, Maz, I guess you're next. If you're here. Maz, you're muted. Maz? So I see your screen, Maz, but you need to unmute. We can't hear you, Maz.
Hello?
Yes, better.
Okay.
It's not very loud, but we can hear you.
All right. So I will talk louder. All right, so the work that I'm going to show is the work on the operator. We did a lot of work on the operator past few weeks. What I'm not going to show, but I can talk about, is the work that we are doing with the Maestra team on the Istio operator. There is a PR that has not been merged yet. It's got to be reviewed and tested, which is what it's going through now. But the Maestra's Istio operator is now going to call out to the Kiali operator in order to install Kiali. So that work has been done. We're just waiting for that to get pulled in. But what I will show is some of the features of the operator where we're now not requiring cluster roles to be assigned to Kiali. Up until now, users had been required to assign cluster roles to Kiali, and some people did not like that requirement. They wanted to restrict the roles that Kiali needed. So what we now require is just roles being created on namespaces that we want to give Kiali access to. This is also going to help with our multi-tenancy support. But right now, what I'm showing is I've installed Kiali with full cluster roles, what we have now. So what this allows Kiali to do, if you do want to give that access to Kiali, is you create namespaces on the fly. You could see Kiali can immediately see them. And if I delete it, you can see it'll go away. So what this is showing is Kiali has a cluster role that allows it to see all namespaces in the entire cluster. This is how upstream Istio works. This is how the operator will work if you install it by telling it you want to give access to the entire cluster. But if I want to now switch this and say I don't want to give Kiali cluster access, what I can do is edit the Kiali CR. Now this is the CR that the operator is watching for. So for changes to this, the operator is going to make changes. So I'm going to say I only want access to my project. Let's say I'm in multi-tenancy mode, and in this mesh, I only want to show my project. So I'm going to save that. This is going to take a little bit of time because the operator is now going to detect that change, and then it's going to do its reconciliation process, which is what operators do when they see CRs change. They're going to go through the reconciliation process, determine what changed, and do the necessary alterations. So what the operator is doing right now is it's revoking that cluster role, and it's creating individual roles for Kiali to see only that my project. This also works on Kubernetes, not just OpenShift, which is an interesting feature that we have. If you're on just straight Kubernetes, you can use this feature. All right, so you can see the operator just terminated the old Kiali pod. It restarted a new one. It's still going through some stuff, so it's probably not going to be up right now. If I restart this, it's probably not going to be up now. We're going to have to wait for it to now create the roles and do all kinds of stuff. But what should happen here is now it should give me access only to my project. You shouldn't see that default namespace card or the other namespace cards that were around. There you go. So there's my project. And of course, it can see the control plane namespace. You always get this by default. But here you see default is gone. And if I were to create a MAS namespace, you won't see it. Remember before the card immediately showed up after it refreshes, we saw the new namespace come up. You're not going to see that now. Kiali is now fixed. You can only see the namespaces that I declare accessible. Basically, we're telling it what our tenant is. That's all I got.
All right.
Matt, I would also mention for this particular thing that on Kiali.io, the getting started section, we also did a lot of work on that during this sprint to reflect a bunch of this information. So it's up to date. It talks about these different types of installation options and how to manage the namespaces and so forth. So just wanted to mention that.
Right. So all this is documented on the Kiali.io page. Yep.
All right, great. Kaina's still not here. So, Jay, you said you had something to show, plus
yeah, I can
your microphone works well.
That actually Kaina didn't have on his list because we weren't sure if it was going to get merged in time, but in fact, it just got merged this morning, so I may as well mention it. Let me share. All right, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so this is, ignore the graph on top. It's this bottom line that I just wanted to show you, and this wasn't really prepared for a demo, so it's kind of haphazard right now in the test environment. But basically, we did a lot of work very recently on service entry handling. So service entries, to remind you, are these ways that you can expand your mesh to send requests from inside the mesh outside the mesh. And we represent those in Kiali with like this home plate type icon as a node type. And there's a few significant changes given today's update. The first is you'll notice that this is labeled as www Wikipedia. That's actually the name of the service entry, whereas in the past, these service entries were actually basically the requested endpoint, which wasn't really correct. So for example, if I was to previously make a request for www.wikipedia.org, that's what this would be labeled at. Or if it was like en.wikipedia.org or something like that, that wasn't really correct, because what you would end up with is for each distinct endpoint requested, you'd get a different node on the graph. And what it really should be, and what it is now, is an aggregate. So if you have multiple hosts on your in your service entry, now those hosts, those hosts will be aggregated into this one node. And over here, so if I select this, you can now see two things that are different. First of all, it's selectable. In the past, it wasn't. Now service entries are, and you can actually get to the detail, which I'll do at the end of this. You can also see the specific destinations that were handled by this particular node. So you can see that the request really was for www.wikipedia.org. The other major change, other than the aggregation and the fact that the service entry node now represents an actual service entry, is that these used to only be leaf nodes, which we found out was incorrect, because you can actually configure things such that your service entry forwards or you can do a pass through to an egress node. So we now handle that in the graph, and that's what this is showing here. That you're making a request to Wikipedia, it's actually configured to potentially send that out to the egress node. And you can get that, for example, in situations where you're doing internal HTTP and then having Istio originate an HTTPS request externally, for example. And that's basically what I wanted to show, but also I just want to show you that you can link to, never mind, my test environment wasn't completely set up. But basically, you can link back to the actual definition. Never mind. Shouldn't have tried to do that in this demo because it was last second, but it works. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Right, so Kenya's not here. Unless anyone else wanted to show something, or if there are questions, comments, suggestions.
The question on what Jay just showed, this used blue lines, which is TCP traffic, and I guess the Wikipedia traffic would be HTTP. Is this something we cannot detect from telemetry, or what's the deal behind it?
Well, the way things are working is that if you have HTTPS traffic, it's going to show up as TCP, okay, because we can't detect it otherwise. If you have HTTP traffic, it will show up as a regular HTTP edge, not the TCP. That's an Istio. I mean, that's not us. That's just the way the telemetry is generated.
All right. Any other question, comments, suggestions, features, requests, committers? If not, then let's stop the recording and stop the call. You can find us on Kiali.io. You have all the links to find us, like the mailing list and the IRC room. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.